So this is NECO 2021 General Mathematics Paper 2, and we are answering question number 8B, and the question reads, in a community, men contributed P Naira each, while women contributed Q Naira each towards a community development fund. In a particular week, 3 men and 5 women contributed a total of 9,500 Naira. In another week, 5 men and 10 women contributed total sum of 17,500 Naira. The question asks is to find Roman 1, the value of P and Q. Roman 2 question asks to find the total amount that will now be contributed by 8 men and 12 women. So let's attempt to answer this very question to get a solution to the problem. Going back to the question, towards that community development fund, it was assigned that each man will now contribute P Naira and each woman will now contribute Q Naira. So in a particular week, a total of 9,500 Naira was contributed by 3 men and 5 women. So let's attempt to get this total contribution in that very week. So 3 men, each contributing P Naira. So total amount contributed by men will now be 3 multiplied by P, which is 3P. Q is the amount contributed by each woman, and there are 5 women in that week that contributed. So the amount for women that contributed will now be 5, the number of women multiplied by Q, the amount each woman is contributing. So if you add this, it will give you the total contribution in that very week, which is given as 9,500 Naira. This will give us one of the equation. So let's get another equation so that we have 2 pairs of equations in terms of P and Q so that we now solve them simultaneously. So the question says in another week, it is now 5 men and 10 women. 5 men and 10 women that contributed a total of 17,500. So this is the same. I now have 5 multiplied by P, the total amount contributed by men, plus the 10Q, the total amount contributed by women. If I added these two amounts, it will give me the total amount contributed in that week, which is given in the question, 17,500 Naira. So you have 5P plus 30Q equals to 17,500. This equation can be reduced further. Dividing through by 5 gives answer P plus the 2Q equals to 3,500. So you can now call this equation 2, the other one equation 1, so that you can now solve these 2 equations simultaneously because you have 2 unknowns P and Q. So attempting to solve these 2 equations by substitution method, I will now select equation 2. I will make P subject of the formula. So from equation 2, P will now be equals to, simply take 2Q to the right hand side. There you now have 3,500 minus 2Q. Then I can now substitute P by 3,500 minus 2Q in equation 1. So substituting P in equation 1, you now have, this is your equation 1, 3P plus 5Q equals to 9,500. So substituting P by 3,500 minus 2Q, you now have 3 into 3,500 minus 2Q. Then copied your plus 5Q equals to 9,500. So solving this equation for Q, we'll now expand this very bracket. So 3 times 3,500 is what gives 10,500. 3 times minus 2Q is what gives minus 6Q. Copied your 5Q, copied your 9,500. Collecting like terms, minus 6Q plus 5Q gives result minus 1Q. And minus 1Q shifted to the right. And this 9,500 shifted to the left becomes minus, so you have 10,500 minus 9,500, so you have 1,000 in the end. So your Q is now going to be 1,000 Naira. So the amount each woman contribute is now 1,000 Naira. So let's just use this value to find the P. So substituting Q by 1,000 in equation 2, look at equation 2, it says P plus 2Q equals 3,500. So replacing Q by 1,000, you now have P plus the 2 times 1,000 equals to 3,500. 2 times 1,000 simply gives answer 2,000, and 2,000 shifted to the right becomes minus. So you have 3,500 minus 2,000. That will leave you with 1,500. So P is now 1,500. That is amount contributed by each man is now 1,500. And that answered the question Roman 1. So move to Roman 2. Roman 2 that asks to find the amount that will be contributed by 8 men and 12 women. So have the amount contributed by men, which is 1,500, and the amount contributed by each woman, which is 1,000. So there I can now find the total amount that will be gathered by 8 men and 12 women. That will now going to be 8, the number of men, multiplied by 1,500, amount contributed by each man, plus 12, the number of women, multiplied by 1,000, the amount contributed by each woman. So multiplying 8 by 1,500 gives answer 12,000. Multiplying 12 also by 1,000 gives another 12,000. So adding 12,000 and 12,000 gives a result 24,000. This will now be the amount that will now be contributed by 8 men and 12 women. And this answered the question. Let me just quickly share with you the market distribution for this very question as it is there in the marking scheme. The very first mark is bonus 1 mark. And this bonus 1 mark is for getting correct equations 3p plus 5q equals 9,500 and the p plus 2q equals 3,500. If these two equations are correct, you now have this bonus 1 mark. Next mark is attempting to solve these two equations simultaneously by substituting p in equation 1. You now have this method 1 mark. When you now solve that q and arrive at the answer 1000 correctly, you have this accuracy 1 mark. Next mark is substituting the value of q in any of the equation in attempt to find the p. If you do it correctly, you have this method 1 mark. And when you now have the value of p as 1500, you now have this accuracy 1 mark. Next mark is another method 1 mark, attempting to find the total amount that will be contributed by 8 men and 12 women by multiplying 8 by 1500 and 12 by 1000. If you do that correctly and adding the two products, you have this method 1 mark. And when you now have the total amount as 24,000 naira exactly, you have this accuracy 1 mark. So if everything is done correct in this very question, you have 7 good marks.